unless the Gentiles were circumcised and kept all the other Jewish ceremonial laws, they could not be saved. Salvation, so they believed, was to be found only within God's covenant community. And according to the Old Testament, there was no other way to become a part of God's chosen people except through circumcision. In short, Gentiles could be saved only if they first became Jewish proselytes. So, were the Jews in Old Testament times God's agents to spread the gospel? Yes. As Christians are today? Yes. What is the difference between becoming a part of the Jewish nation during Old Testament times and becoming a Christian today, if both are God's agents for spreading the gospel? Why was circumcision necessary? Let's first establish. Do you believe circumcision was necessary for males in Old Testament times if they wanted to become part of the Jewish nation?
Yes.
It was necessary if they wanted to join the Jewish nation. Okay? Why was circumcision of the body necessary for someone to join the Jewish nation in Old Testament times, but not necessary for someone to become part of the Christian church? Why? If both are God's agents, why?
Because the meaning was made clear by that point. The whole point of circumcision was to reveal something about your relationship with God. And by the time...
To who? To who? Who did the men go around revealing their circumcision to? Right, but they weren't revealing their circumcision to people. And it's an important point to make. But you're right. You are right in what you're saying. I just wanted to maybe just have a little fun with the words you chose. But you are right in what you're saying to a point. Okay? And I want to unpack that point. Did someone have to be circumcised in Old Testament times to be part of Judaism? Yes. The answer is yes. Did someone have to be circumcised and become part of the Jewish nation in Old Testament times? Notice, in Old Testament times, in order to have salvation. No. Get your mind around that. It's missed repeatedly. Circumcision was not necessary to be saved in Old Testament times or New Testament times. Do we have examples of Old Testament people being saved without circumcision? Yeah. All the patriarchs before Abraham, and then since Abraham, Nebuchadnezzar, Naaman, perhaps the thief on the cross. Yes. We don't know if he was Jewish or not, but perhaps, yeah. But we have many examples in Old Testament of people. People could be saved without becoming part. So then what's the point of become Jewish nation? Remember the Jewish people were actors in a grand play, a grand theater. They had a cool stage with intricate costumes and really cool props and a very precise script that many have called scripture. And that script, if you're going to go out on stage and act out a drama, then you have to follow the script that the director has given. If you go off script and do your own thing, then suddenly what you're enacting doesn't teach what the drama is supposed to teach. And so you would get taken off stage. Or if you get really off script, they tear the whole thing down and suspend it for 70 years. And during those 70 years, were people still being saved? No one's sacrificing a temple. Script isn't being followed. People are being saved. Get your mind around this. All the Old Testament stuff was not salvific. It did not provide salvation. It did not heal from sin. It did not regenerate hearts. It did not save people to participate in it. It only taught a theatrical, object, symbolic lesson that was designed to enlighten minds to the larger reality, which was salvation. And thus, on the circumcision point where you were going, circumcision is a metaphor from what the Scripture teaches for the New Testament, that we must have circumcision of. Okay, metaphorically. Now think about the object lesson. This is kind of a strange, weird object lesson, isn't it? But it's the point I was making a moment ago. Why circumcision? Number one, for an adult to be circumcised, is it painful?
Absolutely.
More painful than a child. Still painful for a child. Well, a child cry to be circumcised. An infant cry to be circumcised. Less painful for the infant? What's the metaphor there? The more we've gone in life before we've given our heart to the Lord, the more addictions, the more problems, the more habits of sin. Thus, the deeper the cutting has to go and the more painful it is to have our hearts change. So first off, there's a lesson. It is a painful experience to be circumcised. Number two, when you're walking around the street, on the street, and you walk up to people, can you tell just by walking up to somebody who's been circumcised and who's not been circumcised on the street? You have no idea. When you walk up to people in the street and you just meet people in the street, do you know whose hearts have been circumcised and whose hearts have not?
Yes.
No, you don't. You do not. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. We don't know. Now, is it possible for you to become very intimate with somebody, whether in a romantic relationship or perhaps a medical practitioner? Okay? And in that intimate relationship, you can discover if someone's been physically circumcised or not.
Yes.
Okay? Or maybe close friends that on a hot summer day are skinny dipping together. You might be able to discover these things, right?
Or any locker room.
Or a locker room, okay. Same thing when you come to know people as real people. You get to actually know them intimately, not sexually, intimately. You will begin to discover their true traits of character. And you'll discover whether their hearts have been changed or not. So this metaphor of circumcision is very powerful. Now, while one could not go on stage and act in the play if they didn't wear the right costumes and have prepared themselves in the right way, thus they couldn't be part of Judaism without the physical circumcision, one could experience the reality of circumcision with the heart without having the body circumcised. And that's what the difference between the Jewish and the Christian.